Welcome back to Disenfranchised. I am your host, Travis Gearhart, and I'm here with my co-host,
Keith Cunningham,
and we are
Disenfranchised.
So it is our pleasure to receive the ghost tracker extraordinaire himself, Mike McDowell. And he had just got done with, we had him on obviously a few weeks ago, and we were talking about how he had a poltergeist situation. And it was a local one. He was kind of giving us some of the details on it. So he has given us the exclusive to kind of do the wrap up and talk about that project. So I'm just going to hand the floor over and I'm just going to mute my mic and I'm going to let Mike just do his thing.
Sounds good. Well, thanks guys for having me on. Enjoyed being on last time with you guys. You guys are always fun to talk to. So again, for those not familiar with me, my name is Mike McDowell. I run Chaos Haunted and Historical Tours. I've been ghost hunting for over 25 years. I started the Indiana Ghost Trackers in 2000. Paranormal group that got really big at one time, and we still go out and ghost hunt. We still investigate, and this is what kind of led us into the path of what we're going to talk about now. Well, in the case of doing my ghost tours, I come in contact with a lot of people, and I meet a lot of folks that come to me with their problems. And I want to remind people too is that the ghost trackers, like many paranormal groups, we don't charge for investigations. If some paranormal investigator says they want to come out and investigate your place and they want to charge you a couple $1,000 or something, find somebody else, because we don't charge. I usually tell the homeowner, if you want to buy us some pizza, by all means. Otherwise, don't worry about it. We're
Pizza
good
and Bud
either
Light.
way. But it kind of makes up with us coming out and having a little pizza since we gave up our dinner time. But other than that, no, we don't look for any kind of money for this stuff. So an outfit from out east that advertised all over the internet for paranormal investigations managed to hear from these folks, and they're in Highland, Indiana. These folks had tried everything to get rid of the ghosts, and I'm not sure how much I went into what they did before we did the investigation, but it was pretty extreme. They called out the Catholic Archdiocese and they did a minor exorcism on the property. The guy from the Archdiocese said, "You're faking it. There's nothing here." The homeowner has had reports of pounding at the walls, pounding at the windows, things being thrown across the room to the TV and breaking the TV, items disappearing in front of their very eyes, pots and pans that were one moment on top of the stove ending up in the refrigerator and then on the kitchen floor and then back in the refrigerator. Furniture was thrown around. We have windows open and close, objects disappear and reappear. We had printers operating on their own, giving cryptic messages like, "I'm going to kill this person." Just all kinds of insane things and some things that didn't add up. So going into this case and doing our preliminary interview, we were told by Dad that there was a video, and I could share it with you afterwards, and you guys can see what I'm talking about and share it on air. But he said that the voice in his son's head that talks to him and nobody else can hear it is the entity. And it said, "Dad, if you go on your phone and you look right now, there's a video on there for you of me, of the entity." And when you go on there, it's this scary looking thing. But if you look down at the bottom right corner, it's a filter. It's literally just a filter. It's all it is. So I downloaded the same filter and made the same effect. So that right there kind of blows the water. I don't know. Takes the wind out of your sails when
Right.
you're
Well, and like you
investigating
said, if
something.
you share that with us afterwards, I can actually put that in. I have the ability to kind of drop it right in here, so we
Okay.
can drop that in right here, and people will be able to see it.
So this is showing up on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't know what that is.
I have no idea what it is or where it even came from, but it just shows up.
So this is showing up on multiple occasions.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't know what that is.
I have no idea what it is or where it even came from, but it just shows up.
Yeah.
So, that being said, though, there was still pounding, and the son was literally being choked and strangled by something, by the entity. I hear a lot of feedback. You guys okay?
I think
Yeah.
Keith, I think you're getting some air. If you want to mute your mic, maybe.
Am I breathing in it? Here,
I think so.
It was. Oh, that's much better. I thought there was something going to blow up or something here. So anyway, the son was being choked and strangled. So when I say a poltergeist, a lot of people don't know what a poltergeist is. So as soon as I started hearing about this, my question to the homeowner was, one, do you have a teenager in the house? Yes. Is that teenager seeking psychiatric treatment? Yes. So with that, it's almost a given. If you have an adolescent, sometimes they, unbeknownst to them, do things with their mind, called psychokinesis. And it's usually when there's a lot of trauma, a lot of distress. Sometimes these teenagers are somewhat suicidal, and they start to see a psychologist and get on some meds, and things kind of quiet down. But so in this case, we went through to do the full investigation before, trying to make any decisions. Now, a couple of strange things the homeowners also told me is that they contacted a lady called the cleaner who came out to the house to get rid of the ghosts out there. She
That's
came out.
ominous.
It didn't get rid of anything. In fact, they told her, and she came back free of charge and was going to try again. And she came out with a couple apprentices, people helping her out, and she got scratched by something, and it sent her running out of the house. Um, she didn't know what she was dealing with. I don't think it wasn't a ghost.
Right.
They contacted a guy. I don't want to get like nasty phone calls and emails. So let's just say a guy out of East Chicago, Indiana, who thinks very highly of himself, who came out and did a ritual at the house and sacrificed a pigeon and spent 8 hours, covered the floor in blood and everything else. And, proclaimed at the end of 8 hours, we've gotten rid of it. And as he's pulling away in the car, it all starts up again. All the knocking and the banging.
Is he possibly in the Epstein files?
Sometimes you wonder. But
He's
he
at least not a
charged
friend of PETA's.
he charged the family $800 to do this.
It's
That's
expensive.
how
treatment.
badly the family wants to get rid of what's there, what's going on. And again, they didn't understand what was happening. An experienced paranormal investigator, they might know. Early, paranormal investigators who haven't done this long, they may not know, they may not have read much or understand much behind it, but I've dealt with poltergeist cases in the past, so I had my suspicions. And, but again, I wanted to give it a fair shake and make sure. The first thing I did, I reached out to a friend of mine that I met out in Waikiki. His name's Lapaka. He's a famous tour guide. He's written books. He's been on TV shows. He's very renowned. And I met this guy, and what a nice guy, down to earth, very smart guy. He's kind of a medicine man of his people, though, of the Hawaiians. And so I reached out to him and just out of curiosity, hey, have you dealt with any poltergeist cases? I've got this one that sounds really bad. Just wonder if you got any suggestions. And he said, let me introduce you to someone, a friend of mine, a mentor, Lloyd Arbaugh. Lloyd Arbaugh is a renowned parapsychologist from the Rhine Institute out east. He's written numerous books. He's a leading authority on poltergeist cases, on psi cases, on the supernatural. And I'm a big fanboy. I was like, what? Lloyd Arbaugh? I've never met this guy, and he's just, what a terrific guy. So he agreed to meet with me. We did a video conference. We talked for 20 minutes. I gave him all the details of the case leading up to this, and we talked about it. And he was pretty sure also that it is what we're talking about, a human agent poltergeist activity. So again, for those that are not familiar with poltergeist, they think poltergeist the movie, like, things flying around and tops spinning in the air and, angry dolls and trees trying to capture kids. That's not a poltergeist, okay? A poltergeist is a human agent, and unbeknownst to them, they're causing a lot of things to happen in their house. Now, it could be from visually seeing entities. It could be from visually seeing what look like ghosts, pounding, knocking. In fact, it's usually much more violent with things being thrown than most haunted locations. So again, working with Lloyd Arbaugh, I put together a plan for these folks. We went in and did our investigation, and I had a couple of really experienced investigators there, Chris Lincoln, Jimmy Kunis. We had Anna Ortiz from the Times newspaper come out and join us, and they found really nothing, no evidence. And these guys are very good paranormal investigators, been doing it a long time, just like I have. And I asked them, they said, we didn't really pick up anything there. And that's typical for poltergeist cases because the activity is brought on by a human person. And to get evidence of this, you almost have to like camp out at the site for days and days just to wait for something to happen that you can videotape or record. So I did get a little bit of evidence. I'll share that with you guys after the show here, and you can play that. One of the strange things I got, the wife there in the house, the teenager's mom, she said, she heard a story about a neighbor whose husband died, and she locked her husband's ghost in a shed. And I'm sitting there shaking my head, going, "What?" Yeah, she locked her husband's ghost in a shed. She said, "Have you heard of anything like that?" And I hear this little voice on my recorder on EVP. EVP stands for electronic voice phenomena. And it responds, it says, yeah, that's it.
When it started, it was like a day after we had always had family Christmas, whatever. And my one son had brought a friend that he didn't know. And then she started.
And that was pretty odd, but I often wonder if we don't bring in spirits with us or if things kind of trail in behind us when we come in because we go to haunted sites all the time. Another weird thing, we were doing something called the spirit box in
You
the
gotta
house.
wipe your shoes. Sorry.
What's that?
Said you gotta wipe your shoes.
Yeah, exactly. But they could also just be nearby spirits kind of wandering or passing through, not necessarily hanging out in the house. But the another thing we had, we used a device called the spirit box, and the spirit box scans radio frequencies, and it says, I said, "Can you tell us who you are, what your name is?" There's a brief pause, and then a voice says, "Spirit."
What's your name?
That's weird, being that it's the spirit box and we call it the spirit box, and a voice says their name is Spirit.
Right.
So, kind of corny, but there was a couple of recordings I got there, but not a lot. And we did do baseline and then EMF meter readings to look for anomalous like electromagnetic frequency readings, temperature drops, anything like that. We had a few different other paranormal devices to look and see if we could detect anything, and nothing really occurred, unfortunately, there. One of the things that kind of detracted in the house there is the folks, they do have a little bit too much stuff. It's, I hate to use the term, but you know what I'm saying. Things
like
were
hoarder
piled in
type deal.
boxes. You couldn't even walk into a couple of the bedrooms. Everything was just piled up in there. Not a really conducive place to bring up a teenager. So obviously one of our recommendations to try to make the flow there in the house a little bit better is to minimize a little bit better and try to get rid of some of that stuff. So it also wasn't a good situation for us to spend a lot of time in there, being that it was a little bit cramped quarters. And the family is literally just sleeping on the living room floor because of the activity happening to them. They've they've witnessed something called an invisible hand, which will reach in and grab them or touch them, and the mom and the teenager would be poked by this and hit by it. Um, they've even felt this invisible hand, they said. Now, asking Lloyd about it, he said that does happen in some cases where you get an invisible hand that, again, is a result of the agent there. You also have water puddles that just appear in certain areas of the house. That can happen in psychokinesis cases also, and that's a little unusual. So psychokinesis, that means power to move things with the human mind. And people with the poltergeist cases, usually these teenagers, they don't know they're doing it. But sometimes the cases kind of go on for a while, and the teenager feels a need to kind of blow off a little bit more steam by faking stuff. So things were showing up at the house, like items were being ordered online with mom and dad's credit cards. And they would get things delivered to the door, whether it was pizza or items themselves, or things off of Amazon. And they said the entity was doing it. But of course, the entity is only talking with the teenager, not mom and dad. They can't hear it. And it's telling the teenager these things. It's ordering these things and yada, yada. And I had to break it to them. It was their teenager. It
Yeah.
wasn't,
The
it wasn't the entity.
The entity
It
was
wasn't the
ordering
entity.
PlayStation games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, things like that just kind of like make you disappoint you, but there was legitimate evidence. So if you look at some of the famous poltergeist cases, even on YouTube, there's a lot of famous ones that they talk about on there. A lot of these things have similarities where legitimate psychokinesis events are happening, but at the same time, you've got some fakery, some things that are going on that can be explained. So going through all of our investigation, and there was a lot more that was happening at the site beyond that, we, sat down with the folks, and I thought they were going to throw me out of the house. I thought, honest to God, because Dad believes so much that there's something there. Very Christian man, very devout Catholic guy. Um, and the situation is it's a grandfather and grandmother that adopted the teenage boy whose mom had died at 33, and the father didn't want to be in the boy's life. So at the age of 12, he came to live with his parents or grandparents, and they adopted him. Kind of a moving story, but the activity started almost immediately. We did full locale historical data, no murders, no sites, nobody dying there that we know of. There wasn't that many homeowners. This house goes back to the 1960s. It's not that old of a house. Nothing weird that happened around there. It's actually in a nice neighborhood in Highland. It's a nice looking house. There's so for those people that are like, oh, I lived in a house in Highland and it was haunted, and I wonder if it's the same house. No, it's it's not a ghost house. So I'm not going to give the details of the family of the house out, but I can assure you it doesn't have anything to do with ghosts in the house. So I hate to disappoint people, but so getting back to the story though, I thought Dad was going to throw us out. Sitting down and telling him his teenager was faking a lot of this stuff, and let him know that all the stuff that's going on was the teenager this whole time. And we had to work to get this PK, this psychokinesis, under control. But they took it pretty well. And I did mention Lloyd Arbaugh, who is definitely an authority on the subject, who helped us with the case, and that kind of helped dispel any doubts. Some of the things that Lloyd has suggested for families like this, surprisingly, are bowling. Because you think about this, now when the human mind is out and you're bowling, you're looking at that ball and you're trying to make it go just the right way in between the pins. And this is to blow off some of that psychokinesis. They believe the psychokinesis builds up in the mind. And when it builds up, it blows out and it just does all these crazy things. For instance, in the house during the case, some of the things that happened is there was 5 fires that sprang up at the same time in the house. And it was related to tissue paper soaked with rubbing alcohol. Now, maybe he had something or this maybe so the boy had something to do with this, but
I'll edit that.
yeah, thanks. Pretend I cussed.
but we allow that on this show, so that's okay.
Oh, that's actually okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So 5 fires sprang up at the same time. The fire department was called. The fire department came out and they accused the teenager of setting all these, but he was sitting right there with his parents the whole time when all these fires sprang up around the house. It wasn't him, but maybe he had something to do with that. But then again, these 5 fires starting at the same time right after the fire department left, he got knocked out. And this was a typical thing for the boy. He'll get knocked out and not be able to be woken up. His father will do everything he can to wake him up, can't rouse him unless the entity wants him to wake up. So
That's
this was
crazy.
going on. So this was going on. And what happened, I was able to explain to Dad about the 5 fires and him being knocked out. He was knocked out for so long, and they had never experienced it that long, that they took him to the hospital. That's how worried they were about their son. And when they got to the
Understandable.
hospital, he was okay. But I explained it was that psychokinetic energy that built up in his mind to a degree that it blew out. It basically knocked him out because it was so strong. It was so powerful. So it's no wonder that this happened to this poor guy. So, and then during our reveal, found out that the teenager is also has a high functioning autism. So autism, certain areas of the brain are more heightened, and others
Mhm.
are not. So it's possible that because of the way his mind works, that he had developed this PK energy. And as I was talking to somebody who works at an autism center helping autistic teenagers and kids, they were not all that surprised by my poltergeist case. She actually said, I can see that happening with a number of autistic kids, that they would have this sort of thing possibly develop with just, the way that the mind works.
That's kind of
So
cool.
yeah, it's such a weird case. It is, but I was able to suggest the bowling. Also, Tai Chi was a recommendation from Lloyd. Practicing Tai Chi will help. One of the things I set him on the course with was dowsing rods. Now, a lot of people wonder about dowsing rods. We use them in ghost hunting. They cross over the spot where a ghost is at. You can ask yes, no questions. But if you focus on the rods, you can actually move those rods with your mind. You could like walk around and say, I want the rods to point at the door, and it'll point at the door. So I taught a little bit about doing that. The reason was he can exercise that psychokinesis to, kind of release some of that built up energy. I also had a friend of mine who helps us get rid of ghosts. His name is Dan. He called in and went through and he did like an energy cleansing where he cleared out a lot of the negative energy in the house. There's was a lot of buildup, he said, of negative energy, and that was in. So, I mean, the family really strongly wanted to believe that it was an entity, that it was an outside influence that was doing this whole thing. But in the end, it was a teenage son that had this happening. And a little bit of detective work and just, working with the family, we were able to, help them out. So I'm staying in touch with them. They're still trying to work through it. Another thing that Lloyd recommended was family counseling. Family counselors versus a psychiatrist are a totally different thing, to sit and work with the energy of the family, how they are interacting with each other. That will help remove um, some of the problems that they're having, just if they can get along better. So there's not, issues, especially for someone that has autism. So they all seem willing to work on these things to try to get to that level so things can get back to normal for them. And I'm hopefully that's the end of things for them. And I'll like I say, I'll stay in touch and hopefully they're okay. And
Right.
then I'm on to another case. So
Right. So that's so it does so it sounds like what you said is that most of it seemed like it was, things that were not, were the boy. I mean, other than the fires kind of going off at one other time, is there anything else that was really stands out to you as something that really, you know, was there any, I guess, smoking gun, you know? That really made you say that maybe it was, more paranormal than just acting out?
well, there was literally a fist hole that appeared in the wall right in front of him as the walls were pounding.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the pounding at the walls, the knocking at the walls, things disappearing. They had the battery taken out of their phone while they were talking on it. It was like a landline and all of a sudden the phone went dead, and they looked at the back of the phone and the battery was gone.
That's
Just
crazy.
vanished. And then they had another phone in the house with the same battery. They got that phone and started using it, and the same thing happened. And a couple days later, the husband was talking to the wife and said, "We need to buy a couple of new batteries. I think I'll run over to Best Buy and see if they have any." As soon as he said that, the batteries both appeared on the couch right next to him. It's like they just showed up, these
Yeah,
batteries. So
that is.
there's so many crazy things that happen with this case and so many stories, but there's also things that you can explain to, you know.
Yeah. So one thing I did write down. So one of the things that I did write down is something that you had said earlier. You said something about like kind of when you have ghosts that are in the area. Have you ever noticed that like either in this case or any other case, do you guys ever feel like you're like almost like conduits, you know? Is it where even if it's because you guys, you and your team show up to places and you have all of, you have this knowledge, you have the ability to like you said, you in the last episode, that you have felt like maybe you have a touch of um of being able to communicate more telepathically and more in that realm than say other people. Do you ever feel like you guys are almost like conduits, like you talk about a dowsing rod, like almost like a human dowsing rods?
Sure. Some cases more than others, and it could be because I'm more aligned with the spirit there. Maybe we're kind of on the same wavelength more. But sometimes you just go in and you feel something. And there's some cases I could just go in and I could walk to a spot and say, "There's something right here, something right in
Right.
front of me." And whether I could pick it up with my equipment at that point, it may or may not happen, but I could feel things there. And that's part of the reason why I've gotten a lot of EVP, the electronic voice phenomena, in the past, is I'm kind of drawn to a spot and I kind of use what I'm feeling to try to talk to what's there and talk to the spirit. I mean, an example might be I was at the cemetery many years ago out near Muncie. It was a dark hillside and the spotlights were coming up from a church up on a hill around the cemetery. And as I'm standing up by the church, just looking out over the cemetery, it was like a nice night in June, and the crickets were chirping, and it was just very relaxing out there. And as I stood there looking out, there's some tall headstones over to the side, and I saw a woman in a ball gown step out from behind one of the headstones. I went, "What?" And as I walked over, I could see two headstones. One was Sarah, one was Elizabeth. I said, "Is your name Sarah?" And as I said that, I felt this pinching at my elbow, like somebody was pinching me. And I said, "Is your name Elizabeth?" On the recording, it just said no. And that was EVP. But I felt at that time then suddenly like I can communicate with the spirit. I didn't know I had just gotten that EVP, but I was just saying, "Why don't you move on? Why don't you go to the other side?" And I heard her say to me, "He's waiting for me. I can't leave. I'm waiting for him. He should be back any time." I said, "Hon, you
Ooh.
gotta go. He's waiting for you on the other side." I said it out loud. He's not here anymore. He's waiting for you on the other side. And then I could then feel just her denial, like she was just like, "No, I don't believe it," and just walked off. And that's how some ghosts are. They just don't want to believe that it's that simple, that they can just go to the other side and be with the ones they want to be with. And
Wouldn't
like
that
you
be
said, feeling like a conduit, feeling like that connection. Sometimes that happens. Yeah, absolutely.
wouldn't that be considered like being stuck in purgatory? Isn't that what they call that?
It could be. I mean, you could look at it that way, but we don't know how time passes for spirits. Is 10 years like 10 seconds to them? I mean, they're no longer physical matter, so they're no longer subject to time. So how does time pass for them? Is it purgatory? Maybe. Some of the spirits, they seem to intentionally want to be here because they they want something here. There's people that they're stuck to, houses, cars, earthly things that we need to let go of as we pass on. But there's people hanging out or that become ghosts that they're hanging out for a reason. They don't want to go. They know they could go. They just don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of reasons for that too. But purgatory, I mean, that is a good presumption of it and what it could kind of be. I've heard that before, and I've thought that before myself.
Yeah.
So I guess and I know that, and I don't think we touched on this on the last one, but what Keith just said about purgatory and what you said about people being attached to things, I know some of the research and things that I've read in the past have been that there's a couple of different forms of hauntings, where one is a physical cause and effect. You know, you talk, you can tell that they're there. And then the other one is like almost like a moment in time that's so horrible um it's almost, stuck in that position. It's almost like something that's so horrible, a man kills his entire family, and people see it happen over and over again in different things. What are your thoughts on that? Like, what are your thoughts, with that sort of haunting versus the other? Do you see more of that? Do you think that that's more particular? What are your thoughts on it?
There's a lot of both kinds of hauntings. So the one you're talking about is we call it residual hauntings. It's like an energy is ingrained after something has happened there. Like you say, it could be a murder or a death or some sort of traumatic thing that happened. And the other is, we call it an intelligent haunting. And that is an interactive spirit where they seem to know that they're there. They can respond cognizantly to questions. If you ask questions on EVP, you might get an answer. They might come over by a EMF meter where you get a reading. So those are the two main kinds of ghosts, if you will. But I mean, there's other things out there too that, I mean, we don't get into. I mean, before the show, you mentioned cryptids, and there's all kinds of other stuff even beyond that. There's what we call elemental spirits that were never human, that exist in either nature or in other ways. I think the Catholic Church had determined that there was like 900 types of demons, and if something wasn't a angel or something related to being holy, the Catholic Church just deemed it to be demonic. But that's not really true for everything. There's just a lot of things out there we as humans don't know and understand. A lot of books out there on the subjects, and you can go down that rabbit hole, and I have a little bit. But it's very interesting. It's very interesting. We've had a member of ours in the past that was invited us out to her house, and she had fairies at her house. And I thought she was nuts. And we started getting these weird pictures and having these weird experiences. And after a while, I believed her because I had enough experiences out there to know, okay, there's something behind this. And before that, though, I was like, nah. As an early ghost hunter, I didn't believe any of that stuff. But I've learned some things over the years. And when you say, types of spirits, there's quite a few different things going on out there that we don't really understand, right?
Yeah.
So would you consider,
Yeah.
I know it's just a movie, but the movie The Sixth Sense, would you consider that like an intelligent ghost or intelligent being, or?
Yeah, I think you're
Well,
right. I
yeah.
think it would be an intelligent haunting. I mean, that movie does make a lot of sense for those that are familiar with the paranormal. Obviously, you can have a kid like that, and I've met kids that are similar to this. I helped the kid out years ago who didn't know what was going on. It was like the Sixth Sense kid. And his parents came to me, and they just found me through a friend, and I was able to help them out because they didn't know what their son was going through. But yeah, I certainly think that those were intelligent haunts that they were representing there in that movie. And what a great movie, The Sixth
Well,
Sense. I
it's
mean,
almost like a blend of intelligent haunt with residual, because Bruce Willis doesn't know that he's dead.
right, right.
Sorry, spoiler alert. Oh, geez, I'm sorry. I should have said spoiler. It's only been 25 years, but
It's still
if you
good
haven't
though when
seen
it
it,
comes on.
Sure
it
is.
is. It's
It
always a
is.
good one. But that's kind of an interesting kind of dynamic where they blended the two ideas together. Thinking about it like that. So beforehand, we had a couple of different locations. I know we talked about a few locations before. And if you have any other locations that you have any cool region ghost stories, I know we talked a little bit about
Gypsy's Graveyard and
Gypsy's Graveyard,
Moody Lane.
Yeah,
We talked about that also.
Moody.
Moody
I,
Lane.
I hear a lot about Salesians Boys School out in Cedar Lake, and people ask me about that all the time. And that building used to be wide open where you could just go in. And this was a Catholic boys' school that shut down in the late 1960s due to lack of funding, they said. But disappearances of at least one boy that they say, and
No kidding.
boys being molested out there. And at the time, nobody believed that a priest would molest a boy, but it kind of came to light, came crashing down years later. And they say that that place was pretty darn haunted. And I've been out to the site where it's at, but not into the old buildings. And I've heard stories of people hearing doors slamming shut and hearing voices and walking down the halls and everything else. One of the interesting stories is that there was a family that ended up buying that property, and it was the same family that had the Myers Castle out there in Dyer.
Dyer.
And
Okay.
that family, they won that in an auction, and they took it over. And the first year they had it, they opened up the old Catholic boys' school as a haunted house. After all the rumors of this being on Muller and this same place being talked about all over the place, how haunted it was, they had a pretty good turnout for their haunted house. Well, people were commenting that the guy doing the priest in the basement was doing a really good job. Well, yeah, I heard that there was no priest dressed up down in the basement. They were seeing something that wasn't there. There was also a guy that came on my tours that told me he was one of the workers in the haunted house, and he had put up strobe lights and stuff up there, but he had to get up on a ladder every time to turn these lights on, and then get on a ladder to shut them off at the beginning of the day. And they were pretty high up there, like 8, 9 feet up in the air. So he would see these things turned on by themselves somehow. He commented there's no way that those things should have got turned on. Nobody else, it was his job to turn them on, and somehow these things got turned on by themselves. Yeah, that's just one of those weird places, the Salesians Boys School. They did tear down a lot of the buildings, and I do show one of the pictures taken by a friend of mine on the tours of the old gymnasium that showed, and inside the gymnasium, they got this photograph of what looks like a demonic face, just very vivid, very purplish, looks scary. It was taken back in the late 90s, back before people could try to fake stuff with their film. This was going way back.
Right.
And quite an unusual photo. But that's one of the ones that gets talked about a lot in the area. I think some of it has become folklore. People talk about it so much, and they tell different stories about it. Of course, the old jails, the Crown Point Jail, very haunted place.
Right.
What
Right.
about,
I recommend if you. What's that?
What about, was it Collar Middle School in Dyer St. John area? I was reading online that was haunted, but I didn't know if you knew anything about it. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, Kaler Middle School in Dyer. We go there on one of our bus tours, and a lot of stories about that. And Miss Agnes Kaler was a renowned teacher that taught there, and she retired in 1968 and passed away in the 1980s. And since that time, that school became very haunted. They believe partly by her, maybe also by others. And Agnes was very much loved. The students there all look forward to seeing her. Even her retirement, she would drop by. And her classroom door, where the teacher would be teaching in her classroom, the classroom door would crack open a few inches by itself.
Yeah.
Students swore they'd see the knob turn and the door crack open. And Mrs. Whitcomb would just say, "Come on in, Agnes." And the students would all laugh. But things would happen in that classroom they couldn't explain, like objects, plants that were hanging from the ceiling, spinning around on their own. There was books that would fly off the shelves, landing feet away from the shelves. There was a clock that sailed off the wall, landing 5 feet away from the where it was hanging. There was desks that were moved around late at night where the janitor came in the morning and heard these chairs being all shuffled around, and had his wife call for the police. And Mr. Lawndale, he ran down to the classroom, and it turned out it was Agnes's old room, and he unlocked the room, and the noise all stopped, and there were all the deaths, all piled up like in a pyramid in the middle of the room. Couldn't explain it. There was he would wax the floors late at night, and he'd come back and look, and he'd see a woman's footprints in the wax leading from Agnes's room that had been locked to the stairs and stopping at the top of the stairs, even though the wax went all the way down the stairs.
So you know,
Just things like that.
me and Travis had same kind of experiences in our math class, but it wasn't paranormal. We just didn't have any supervision.
Yeah. Yeah. We just yeah.
I know
Although there were some haunted stories out of Hebron.
There was.
There were some stories about a girl that
she hung
I'm sorry,
herself in the second story bathroom, which I mean that no longer exists now. It's tore down. I heard
Yeah.
about that, but that part of the building no longer exists.
Yeah.
Have you heard?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Have you heard anything about Wolf Mansion in Portage?
Sure. Wolf Mansion is this place that the Wolf family had lived there. We go by there on our Porter County tours, and Mr. Wolf hit it rich in the gold rush and came back and built this place. I think it was 1873. He built that old brick house, and he had a number of children that ended up dying, and some of them were buried in the backyard. And some of the stories about that place are that they hear the sounds of kids running and laughing and playing in the upstairs when no one's there. You can actually hear a ball bouncing up there when nobody's up there. There's been stories of people going in and seeing a woman standing at the bottom of the stairs right inside the main foyer, wearing an old, like 100-year-old like gown, like a black gown, and then just vanishing right in front of their very eyes. But a lot of strange stories out of that place. The current family, very nice folks, I believe, but they don't believe in the ghosts. They say there's no such thing, and they, try to dismiss all that kind of stuff. But when we first started investigating that place, I think it was 1999, we went out there, and a friend of ours knew the current owners back then. Was a doctor and his wife, and they were getting divorced or something. And we almost got in at that point, but then they were out of town or something. So we just walked around the backyard. We had permission to be there, but started hearing stories about it at that point. And there's a strange legend that goes with this house, that there's an old book that travels to each owner. And the book details history of the house, but it also tells you what you're supposed to do about moving things around in the house, like certain things to do to appease the ghosts, like, for instance, putting a swing set over where the kids' graves are in the backyard, that kind of thing. So I'd heard about this from the then owners of the property.
Like
There's
ghost
actually
feng shui.
Yeah, I guess. And they said there was a tunnel, and if you go in the basement, there's the beginning of a tunnel. Apparently, Mr. Wolf was very scared of robbers and thieves in the 1870s, so he had a tunnel built out from the house that ran half a mile down the road, and so his family could get away if there was ever anybody that broke into the house. So that tunnel, it goes into the ground 5 feet now, and then it's cemented off. You can't go any further. But there is that tunnel there. But there's a lot of strange folklore stories that have grown up around that house too. Let me dismiss some of them. There was never slavery in Northwest Indiana, okay? So there was no slaves at Wolf Mansion.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
So people to this day say, "Oh, I think they had slaves and there's manacles in the basement and all this." No, that never happened. We're in Indiana. No, we had no slavery here. So Mr. Wolf had indentured servants, and he had Irishmen, and he had Mexicans and others. But as far as I know, nobody was ever chained up. But he had a small town out there with hundreds of workers that were building stuff for him and working the fields and everything. he owned like 4,500 acres. It was a massive, massive site. And, he built basically a small empire that had disappeared by the next generation. It's kind of a sad tale. The family lost pretty much everything over time. He died pretty young. He ended up with melanoma, which is a form of skin cancer.
Yeah.
Started on his hand. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine how painful that must have been to have died from that? He died at a young age, and how sad. I mean, the family
Well,
they had a
especially something
weird.
that's so easily curable now. Something
Yeah,
you just don't you just take it for granted. I mean, that's why people used to die from the flu all the time.
right, right. So I
It's
mean,
crazy.
a lot of tragedy around that house. So you can imagine, because of all that, maybe some of the spirits stick around because
Yeah.
they're a little angry and upset about things the way they went down. But yeah, I mean, a lot of stories about Wolf Mansion. We get into probably 20 minutes of talking about it on our ghost tour. Um,
Nice.
it was part of a 1980s softcore porn called Bloodbath in Psychotown.
Oh, I know that. No, just kidding.
Well,
I'm
was
just
that
joking.
starring Travis Deerhart?
1980s. I would have been pretty young by then, sir. I would have been young. But
Yeah, and I managed to snag a copy of it at one point because it ended up somewhere like on eBay, and my old girlfriend bought it for me. Just so I have this old VHS tape of Wolf Mansion on Bloodbath in Psychotown.
listen,
But
Michael, your secret's safe with us. It's okay. We this is a safe space.
there you go. There you go. But
The story, it made me think about it. So and I don't think I told this story on the last one, but I did have a weird kid story that I wanted to share last time. I remember wanting to do it, and then we got to talking about other things. But at my old place in Chesterton, I had a weird kind of thing where I had a dream where I was down in my basement, and for whatever reason there were boxes everywhere, and I was in the far corner of the basement, and I was hiding from somebody. In the dream, you don't really know but you're hiding behind these boxes. And in my dream, there was this little girl that was in there. Couldn't tell you who she was. I know they say you're not supposed to be able to see people in your dreams that you haven't seen in regular life. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
yeah, I think I have. Yeah.
I've heard that, but I couldn't tell you who, stuff like this. And so, but the little girl, and it was in the very far corner of my basement, and the little girl in my dream hiding behind the boxes is like, "It's okay. You won't find us over here." And I woke up and I was like, "Oh, that was a weird dream." And I went down to the basement, and in the far corner where I had the dream, there was a bouncy ball in that corner where me and her it was like out of my kids' toy things. I don't know how it ended up over there. I'm divorced, so it was like
Weird.
the week I didn't have my kids. And there's this,
Weird.
and later on, then people would come over and they'd be like, "Oh, what's that bouncy ball?" And I'm like, "Nope, don't touch it." That bouncy ball stayed there until I moved. I left that thing there. I'm like,
I can see why. Yeah.
yeah, my thought process was, you know what? If there is the ghost of some little girl and that's what, she wants a toy over there, I keep it. There you go. Bouncy ball stays over there.
Sure.
That was a weird one though. That one made my skin crawl. Like
Yeah.
that was an odd one.
No,
Uh,
I could understand for sure. Yeah.
so yeah. But so kind of to come full circle here, because I know we're coming up, we only got about 13, 15 minutes. I mean, we don't really have a strong set. We try to kind of close up about an hour. But so kind of with the poltergeist stuff, right? Do you have anything else that's kind of on your docket coming up? Thank you again. Thank you so much for giving us the kind of opportunity to talk to you right after you're done to kind of talk about the close up with it. That's awesome. I know before the show we were talking a little bit about me and Keith getting some GoPros and coming and doing a ghost hunt with you sometime soon.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. We got to buy some GoPros. That'll be one of the things I do with my next paycheck is to get something like that. And you made mention about the Crown Point jailhouse being really haunted. I think that
Oh,
would be.
very. Yeah.
Do you have access to that pretty regularly?
I'm good friends with the lady who manages it, so we could work with her and set something up. I'm sure she'd love to have you in. She's a real nice lady. Her name's Sandy Boyd. So we'll
Okay.
reach out to Sandy and set something up. But yeah, she's a nice gal.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
and that's a good one. That'd be a good one to take you guys out to, because there is a lot of stuff going on out there. It's a big place, fair amount of activity. It's hit and miss. You never know what you're going to get or, what's
Right.
going to
Yeah.
happen.
They don't come in up on demand.
Right. Right.
Well,
My docket, I've got a few houses to investigate where people had contacted me before, either go during the ghost tour season or right after, and they want me to come out and visit. And it wasn't an emergency like this poltergeist case, but the next one is a bar owner in Griffith. She'd rather not say the name of the bar.
ooh, you
And
brought that up on the last show a little bit.
yeah, and it's an interesting case as I dug into the history of the site because I didn't know this, but Griffith had been a diamond stop railroad in the 1800s. So 5 railroads came together at one site, and that's very unusual. So it created a very, very busy site in Griffith where there was a lot of trains coming through all through this area where this bar owner has her place now, but no railroad tracks where she's at now. I mean, the closest is about a mile away. But we think that her site might have been impacted by some of the previous history because right at the corner where she's at, there was, looking back at plat maps from the 1800s, there was a house on the site that belonged to the railroad. Might have been railroad workers that had lived in that house. So maybe that's causing some of the ghostly voices that they sometimes hear at night in there.
Right.
There was a murder that happened in the parking lot where 2 guys got shot. They were involved with the Latin Kings, and they got gunned down in the parking lot of this place. And as far as the owner knows, there's no activity in the parking lot, but you would think with 2 guys being gunned down in the parking lot, maybe there'd be something to that.
Yeah.
And
There's a high probability.
there's some other things too that digging around online just to find out some history. It makes it kind of an interesting place, but not a ton of activity. But her main thing is, she says to her, it feels like there's a negative influence over the place where, she's wondering if it affects the business. So,
Hmm.
we're going to do an investigation, and I've got my buddy Dan, I mentioned, who helped in the poltergeist case. I'm going to see if he could kind of help clear out energy there and see what's going on with the energy at the site to see if he could help her out. So yeah, not as intense as the poltergeist case, but still, it's what we do.
Yeah. It's still
Um,
awesome.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, the last kind of thing that I had on my docket, unless Keith, obviously I had the cryptids that you said that you had a friend that you wouldn't, you'd be willing to put us in touch with, because we do want to talk about some of I didn't realize Indiana, particularly Northwest Indiana, had as many cryptid kind of stuff as I did. We've been digging in a little bit more of some of the kind of supernatural, which growing up I did. I remember when I was a young kid, the X-Files was really big, and everybody else would go to bed, and then I would stay up with my mom until we watched the X-Files, and then I'd go to bed. So I always kind of, dug this sort of stuff. But the only other thing that I had was, and this was one that my girlfriend had brought up, the Dewey House in Michigan City, I guess, was supposed to be a big one. I didn't know if you knew anything about on that, and then after that, we'll let you go to bed.
I won't go to bed anytime soon, but sure.
Well,
Dewey House,
anytime. Well, within reason, you know what I mean. But then,
yeah. I'm happy to stay longer and talk about this, that, and the other. But the Dewey House was actually in Valpo. It's off of 700.
oh, okay,
So there was a lot of folklore with that particular location. And we investigated it. We investigated near there. There's a cemetery we used to go to, and it was somewhat active as far as being, having ghostly activity. But my first experience at the Dewey House site was kind of interesting. It turned out that there was never any of that stuff that happened there. So as I
okay.
pulled up, it was daytime, and there's this old farmhouse in the corner of 700. And there's this old farmhouse and an old barn, and sitting next door to this was this lady sitting at the end of her driveway in like a beat up old Pinto that wasn't running. She's just sitting there smoking a cigarette in her car, and it's full of newspapers. This car, You know, whether she was going to go recycle them or something. I don't know. The year was like 2000. And so I walked up to her. It was a Sunday afternoon, about noon, and knocked at her window. And she opens up the window. What? Said, you know anything about this property right here? I heard something about it. And she got really mad. She goes, you kids, you come out here and trespass on my family's property. That belongs to my family. This is private property. You can't be out here. People are going through here all hours and they're scaring my dog, and I'm really upset about it. She's cussing me out, you know, and dropping the F-bomb. And I'm like, look, hold on a minute, lady. I've never been out to this house. I've never been inside this house. I'm just asking because I want to find out the real story of what this is. And she says, well, some people call it the Dewey House. I'm like, okay. Some newspaper reporter came out, I guess it was late 90s, and wrote a story about it and said exactly where it was at in the newspaper article. Since then, people started going out to the house. And she says, I try to scare them away, though. I fire a shotgun up in the air to scare them away. So the story is that old man Dewey came home after a rough day at the mill, killed his wife and kids, put their heads on pikes in the front yard, and then blew his brains out in the barn out back. That's the story. All right.
I get
so
it. Overtime, am I right?
There was no old man Dewey. I did my research on this. I talked to a guy at the library who had worked there for like 50 years, Larry. Larry knew everything. And, you know, it's had one of those boring nasally voices. What do you need, Mike? You know, but he knew everything and everyone in Valpo. What a smart guy he was. But he told me that Dewey had lived down the road about half a mile down. He never had kids. His wife died of natural causes, and he died of old age. In fact, it was kind of a funny story about old man Dewey. He was in a retirement home. His health was not good. He had a bit of dementia. He managed to get out in his electric wheelchair for a little stroll, if you will. He rolled his electric wheelchair down to the gas station, and they caught him trying to put gas into his electric wheelchair. Apparently, he was going to go for a ride. So this was old man Dewey of the stories. So this is how folklore gets started. I mean, all these rumors and a creepy old abandoned farm, and somebody's got to make up a story about it. The real story got started, though, because old man Dewey would have kids go park out in his farmland and try to make babies out there in the middle of the cornfields. And so this one kid kept showing up, and he told the kid, knock it off, or I'm going to tell your parents, I'm going to call the cops. So the kid came out there again, and he called the cops on him, but got him in trouble. And so the kid apparently decided he wanted to get even with Dewey. So he started spreading the story around school. At first, nobody believed it, but then after a while, it started to stick because everybody forgot who Dewey was. And there was a convenient abandoned farmhouse just down the road from where Dewey lived. So that's kind of how that story got started, and just an example of folklore and how it gets going.
Yeah. That's crazy, man.
It is.
That is crazy. Like I said, I mean, I could just sit here for 3 more hours and just tell ghost stories. I mean, before we go, is there anything else that jumps out at you that you've heard recently or been dealing with recently, or you know, anything else to cap this off?
Not particularly. I'm always looking for new places. If anybody's got any tips they want us to go check out, happy to go check it out. And again, houses, businesses, we don't charge for investigations, but we don't take every case, only because I'm only human. I have a daytime job and I do run my tours come fall, but I'm always interested in finding out about new cases and checking things out and analyzing the history of it behind it. And it's just fun. I enjoy doing it. It's a fun hobby. You know?
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely share your website on when we put it on there again, and make sure that we put that information on there so that if anybody does need to get a hold of you, obviously, like we said, those couple of clips, if you don't mind, if you could just shoot them over to me in Messenger, no rush at some point, and I can drop them into the show. And Keith, is there anything else that you had?
No, I was gonna go into another thing, but we'll talk.
Well, what do you got? Go ahead.
We'll save it for another show. I got to get up early.
Okay. All right. We'll save it for another one. But yeah, we're coming right up at an hour. Hey, thank you again so much, Mike.
Yeah, no
This
problem.
is awesome.
Yeah,
we will definitely have you back again soon. Well, like I said, we're gonna get some GoPros. We're gonna get in touch with you. We're gonna schedule a fun a ghost hunt with you, and that'll be a cool one.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
So hey, well, thank you again so much. I'm as always, I'm Travis Gearhart.
I'm Keith Cunningham.
We are
Disenfranchised.
Take care, everyone.